Hey everyone, it's Ron Johnson, and this is the Ron Johnson Show on Locked On Sports Minnesota. Today's show got a fun one. We're going to go top 10 Vikings, not of all time, because we know Randy Moss, Chris Carter, Justin Jefferson, is he top 3 now? But we know there's a lot of other players that should be in front of Justin Jefferson. But is Justin Jefferson the number one player on the current Minnesota Vikings as far as importance to this team this 2023-2024 season? We'll talk about that next on the Ron Johnson Show.
Locked On Sports Minnesota Podcasts. It's endless Minnesota Vikings talk with the diverse voices of your local experts. Now the Ron Johnson Show. On the field, in the broadcast booth, Ron Johnson is Minnesota sports. He's played with them, hung out with them, and grown up with all the big names in Minnesota sports. They're hanging out with Ron Johnson. It's the Ron Johnson Show on the Locked On Sports Minnesota podcast. And it starts now.
Hey everyone, it's Ron Johnson, and this is the Ron Johnson Show on Locked On Sports Minnesota. To all of the viewers on YouTube, hey, how's it going? I want to thank you guys for continuing to download, like, subscribe, and share, and also comment. We love the comments. Like, I don't think you guys realize that, but as the show goes, so this top 10 a day, this is definitely our question of the day. The top 10 Vikings on the current 2023-2024 roster and how they're going to impact the season. You guys let us know what your top 10 is, but I'm Ron Johnson, and I'm going to bring my producer into the show, Luke Inman. Sam Ekstrom is still out on vacation, so we'll get Sam later in the week, maybe on the Friday roundtable. But again, I'm Ron Johnson. This is Luke Inman, and we want you to know this episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, the official sportsbook of Locked On. Just make every moment more by visiting FanDuel.com/Locked On. That's FanDuel.com/Locked On to make every moment more. And trust me, it does. I've done a couple bets, and it's definitely worth it. I can't wait to go to Iowa in 2 weeks. Maybe baseball season at that point will be picking up some steam, and I can just bet on an even. Let's see if the Twins can win me a game and win me. I'm not betting a lot on the Twins. I'm not going to lie, people. I'm not putting a lot on the Twins. I'm putting $5 on the Twins. That's about all I'm willing to bet on the Twins. Anything more than that, I'm going to be biting my nails, and my nails have been growing. But Luke, it's time to jump into this top 10, man. We're gonna break this up into 2 segments, people, so that we're not teasing you. The first segment, we're going to do 10 through 6, and then we're going to do 5 through 1. And then we got the daily 3. That's 3 questions. See how much time we have. Maybe 1 minute each today. But Luke, let's jump into this, man. Like, this is tougher than I thought. And I'm not going to lie. Like, I thought this was going to be an easy assignment. I'm like, top 10 Vikings for the season. This should be pretty simple. And there's a lot of topics. Like, I'm looking forward to the Friday roundtable because there's some other stuff I want to talk about in the baseball world, in the basketball world. But today is a football show, people. And we're doing the top 10 Vikings on the current roster. And this has nothing to do with who might be traded, all that stuff. Like, it's just, if the roster were to be as it is right now, heading into the season, week 1, it's not Nebraska, that's the Gophers. Who do they play week 1? Is it Bucks?
It is the Bucks. Yeah, Tampa Bay Bucks at home at the bank, Ron.
Speaking of that, as a teaser, just found out Will Ghostin, D lineman, Bucks, from my hometown Detroit. So he and I linked up last week, and we got to chat. So Will Ghostin is now with my phone. So I got Buccaneers Will Ghostin. So I'm gonna say this, Luke. He went to Michigan State with Kirk Cousins.
Ooh.
He did tell me something about Kirk Cousins that I'm gonna save, and once I get him on, because he's it's a reason he's done some things he's done versus Kirk Cousins. So if you want to go back and watch some Bucks versus Vikings and see what Will Ghostin does in that game to Kirk Cousins, there's a reason behind that. But I got Will Ghostin probably going to join us eventually. I got Ryan Mundy, Pittsburgh Steelers. He's going to join us in July. Later July, he's going to join us leading up into training camp. So got a loaded group of interviews going into training camp. We got Sidney Rice. He told me he'd join us. So trying to figure out what this July looks like with my daughter's softball. Plus, get some good players in here before training camp gets going, because I love the stories. But Luke, jumping out there with your number 10, give it to me. Who's your top 10 Viking? We're going to go back in reverse. What's your number 10?
Yeah, great concept here, by the way, Ron. There's a lot of different ways we could do this. You mentioned most talented. I think the way I looked at it, the thing I kept in mind the most, again, which guys will impact the season the most. So for me, I take that as who's going to have the biggest effect on the outcome, for good or bad, whose play really hinges on the Vikings winning game after game. Number 10 on my list, the newcomer, cornerback, Byron Murphy. Listen, in that defense and scheme, you need guys who can get sticky and cover in one-on-one man cover situations when Brian Flores is dialing up all those exotic blitzes. And more importantly, every great defense has one guy they can leave out on an island and be that shutdown guy. And I don't care if he's playing in the slot, on the inside, or on the boundary on the outside. Being able to let Byron Murphy shadow team's number one wide receiver all game and feel like he got a fighter's chance, that's awfully important to let Flores run the scheme he wants to call game by game, week by week. So Byron Murphy, number 10, most impactful Vikings players on my list.
I'm going to go with KJ Osborne. I'm going to the offensive side of the ball. He's replacing Adam Thielen. We've seen him have some big moments against the Carolina Panthers, but now it's his role. He is wide receiver 2 now, unless Jordan Addison unseats him, I guess you want to call it, during training camp. But I think KJ Osborne is going to be dialed in as wide receiver 2. And at wide receiver 2, he's very important to the success of Justin Jefferson. And that's going to be the key to this team. I think KJ Osborne, number 9.
Number 9 on my list. Well, if number 10 was a shutdown cornerback, number 9 has to be the brick wall in the trenches at nose tackle who can soak up all the blockers up front. Kairis Tonga has enormous amount of pressure on him coming in, filling the shoes of Dalvin Tomlinson now. And again, every great 3-4 defense, you know this, Ron, has a great nose tackle in the middle that makes everyone around them better, opens up the holes for linebackers to go run around and make plays. I think for good or bad, Kairis Tonga is going to affect this Vikings 2023 defense one way or another. So he's number 9 on my list.
I'm going to go with the guy that a lot of people are worried about, but I'm not so much worried about, but he's very important. Greg Joseph. The Vikings kicker, like the Vikings kicker situation over the years has been questionable at best. It's been nail biting for the most part. And it's very scary. But I'm going to go Greg Joseph. I think Greg Joseph importance to this team and starting the season off. He is going to have a little bit of a battle in training camp, but I think that's necessary for the kicker position. But I think Greg Joseph is going to be a very important part to 2023, just getting the team started, whether it's they're getting stopped and they need a field goal. So I'm going to go with Greg Joseph.
A little spoiler, you may see Greg Joseph on my list a little bit later on. Here's my number 8. It's Ed Ingram, and I'll tell you why. Every offensive line is only as good as their weakest link. And that was Ed Ingram last year. No secret there. But if he can take a big step in year 2, like we saw some flashes of, I think this offensive line can easily go from 19th in the league to a top 10 offensive line. Think about it, Ron. This is a group that has all first or second round picks on it, all 5 of them. The talent is there. It's up to the coaches to develop Ingram now and just trust the continuity of all 5 guys coming back will help the cohesiveness, and they'll finally be able to put it all together. Ed Ingram, huge impact on the Vikings offense in 2023.
I'm going to go with number 8, Byron Murphy Jr. When you look at this defense being a multiple set defense, being a defense that probably wants to go a little bit more man coverage, a guy in Byron Murphy, as Ryan Clark put it, can go inside and outside. He's a multi-set DB. He doesn't just have to stay on the right or the left side. He can move around. If you motion, he can stick with a guy in the slot, so he's not afraid to move into the slot. He's done that for the Arizona Cardinals. So I think Byron Murphy to Brian Flores' defense is very important. And also he's the number 1 corner right now. So he's the guy that everybody's going to be looking to maybe shut down wide receiver 1 on a lot of teams. So I'm going to go Byron Murphy Jr. at number 8. Number 7.
7 on my list, one of my all-time favorite Vikings, a guy I'm just so excited to watch under Brian Flores, a guy who I think is really going to be his chess piece, his X factor kind of wild card in this defense all season long, because I still think he's got the goods and is a Pro Bowl type of player. Of course, I'm talking about Harrison Smith, a guy I truly think could be the MVP of this defense. He's going to tally up all the stats, the tackles for loss, couple sacks, couple interceptions. I just can't wait to see Flores deploy him more in the box this year as he gets a little bit older, as almost a hybrid linebacker where he's always been a guy who can fly around and make plays. Dirty Harry, number 7 on my list.
Ooh, well, number 7 for me, I'm going with the guy who was replacing DC, and no, that's not Marvel versus DC Universe. It's DC4. That was Dalvin Cook. I'm going with Alexander Mattison. He's going to replace Dalvin Cook. So I got to go to Alexander Mattison. A lot of people are like, man, running back should be higher. I just think this is a passing team. And so I didn't put a lot of pressure on the running back, but still top 10 is pressure. Alexander Mattison, in my opinion, he's on this list here because he's going to have to give them at least 70 yards a game. I think Alexander Madison's floor is 70 yards a game. His ceiling, we don't know what that can be yet, but 70 all purpose, he's 95 yards. 95 yards a game. We need him in all purpose, whether that's screen game, whatever. And that's where my number 7 guy falls. Number 6.
All right, Ron. Well, listen, you just mentioned it. If the identity of this team is going to be the passing game and the game plan is outscoring everyone 51-50 every week, then there's no question they need to get a huge upgrade from Adam Thielen to Jordan Addison. And Addison needs to be a guy who can come in and just be this polished route runner opposite of JJ, make defenses pay for the single coverage every single game. He'll have every opportunity to put up these great stats in this offense because he's going to get all the one-on-one looks between JJ, Hawkinson, and you mentioned KJ Osborne as well. Still needs to go out there and do it, though. He's got to prove he is this polished, refined route runner and just consummate pro he was touted to be coming out of college. It also means he's got to play 17 games, Ron, which for his size and small frame, I do have some concerns about, but without him, I just think forcing KJ Osborne to be the number 2 guy could spell a little trouble. I don't know if he's a natural big-bodied boundary type of receiver. So tons of pressure on Addison this year to come out of the gate strong and be the guy they drafted him to be in year 1, mind you.
Man, and for the people that don't know, me and Luke did not talk about our list beforehand. So as you see, they're not matching up at all. We did not talk about these. So maybe our top 5 will match up because our top 6 to this point, the bottom 5. Yeah. Our top 5 may match up a little bit more, but our bottom 5 has not because my number 6 player is TJ Hawkinson. Ooh. At tight end, I think TJ Hawkinson has to become a Travis Kelce type of player for Kirk Cousins. TJ Hawkinson has become a true outlet for Kirk Cousins, a true piece to this puzzle. Honestly, and this is where I think this might happen, I think TJ Hawkinson becomes wide receiver 2. I think TJ Hawkinson gets treated like Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce. I think he gets treated like Gronk and whoever else was with New England at that point. I think TJ Hawkinson becomes wide receiver 2 because of who this defense is going to look at. They're going to look at Jordan Jefferson, Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, and KJ Osborne. TJ Hawkinson is going to get a lot of man coverage. I personally feel like, and that's the case, I think Kirk Cousins is going to go there. His relationship with Adam Thielen has moved on. I think him and TJ Hawkinson will form a relationship. So that's our top 6. Just to run it down for you, Luke Inman. He has Byron Murphy at 10, Kairis Tonga at 9, Ed Ingram at 8, Harrison Smith at 7, and Jordan Addison at 6. And myself, Ron Johnson, I have KJ Osborne, Greg Joseph, Byron Murphy, Alexander Mattison at 7, and TJ Hawkinson at 6. Coming back on the next segment, we're going to give you our top 5. It's time to get into the top 5 where maybe our guys align a little bit better. Maybe they align a little bit better. But before we do that, before we come back with our top 5 players on the Vikings team for 2023, we have a word from our sponsors.
Thanks, Ron. Quick reminder, this show is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, as we are each and every day on the Ron Johnson Show. Baseball in full swing. No better place to get in on all the action than at FanDuel. Money lines, parlays, prop bets. You want it, they got it. FanDuel's got everything you need to bet on the entire MLB seasons. Twins, by the way, taking on the Kansas City Royals in Game 3 tonight, looking for the sweep with Pablo Lopez on the mound. Current line, Twins minus 250. You can bet that and plenty more over at FanDuel.com/lockedon. And make sure to check out the no sweat first bet, up to $1,000 back in bonus bets if your first bet doesn't win. Download the easy to use FanDuel app. Get your winnings instantly. Check it out today. FanDuel.com/lockedon. Major League Baseball trademarks used with permission. FanDuel.com/lockedon.
Well, Luke, this is what everybody's been waiting for. I'm pretty sure we're gonna jump into the top 5. And now this, people understand this list too. This is just impactful players. Some people are like, I think this guy should be higher. Maybe, but give us your list. Again, we're going to tweet this out. We're going to Instagram this out. We're going to put this on YouTube. Comment. Join in on the discussion. Let us know who your top 10 players are for the Viking season. I think this is a very good topic. So, Luke, starting with number 5. We're in the top 5 now. Who you got?
I just want to echo what you just said, Ron. Who's going to impact the Vikings 2023 season the most? Number 5 on my list, and you can laugh all you want, but how many games every season comes down to a kick? If it's anything like last year, for good or bad, Greg Joseph is going to end up deciding at least 3, if not 4, maybe even 5 games, Ron, that come down to a kick. So when we talk about the players that will impact the season the most, there's not a lot of other players that I can confidently say are going to impact the season more than Greg Joseph, who could be the difference between double-digit wins or an 8-9 season. Greg Joseph, number 5 on my list.
I like that. Well, I'm going number 5 on my list. I'm going with the hitman. I think Harrison Smith in the back end is going to be very, very important. Like, he's going to be very important because you look at these DBs now. You got Byron Murphy, who's a vet, but you're going to have a bunch of young guys. And I think Harrison Smith, you got Cam Bynum on the other side of him, but I think Harrison Smith, if Josh Metellus is in a bunch, I think Harrison Smith is going to be very important and a very key piece to getting these guys lined up and making sure. He's also going to be a blitzer, I think. I think when they go man, I think I'm going to trust Harrison Smith maybe a little bit sneakier in understanding when not to blitz, and maybe Brian Flores gives him that option where he can kind of float in the hook flat. Or if there's nobody to cover, you just go after the quarterback. So I think if I'm going to give that role to anybody, kind of like an Ed Reed, I'm giving it to Harrison Smith. So he's my number 5. Number 4.
I just think, Ron, if this defense is going to work the way we all want it to, there needs to be a guy up front that has a Pro Bowl type of season. And there's only one guy left on the roster to do so. That's Danielle Hunter. And this defense just needs as much talent and help they can get right now, because the drop-off from Hunter to guys like, and no disrespect, but Patrick Jones and DJ Wanham is so big. I don't know if it's even realistic to expect a middle-of-the-road defense without a guy like Hunter up front in that front 7. So they not only need to figure out the contract situation ASAP with him, but they need him to stay healthy, be the new leader of this defense with Harrison Smith, be the veteran captains that Flores can lean on to make plays and help close out games like za'darius Smith did last season. It all starts with a good pass rush. I think if he's a Viking in 2023, Ron, Hunter can average a sack a game and flirt with close to 20 sacks this season. Just knowing how Brian Flores works, he's going to move him around. He's going to put him in the best position to succeed and just maximize his best talents. Number 4 on my list, Danielle Hunter, critical to the Vikings 2023 season.
For me, and I can't believe we've never done this. You look at KCP, you look at MPJ, you look at all these guys with these 3-syllable names, and they give them a cool name. I'm not sure why we haven't gone KDC. That's Kirk Daniel Cousins. Kirk Cousins for me is number 4. KDC sounds so much cooler than just Kirk. KDC behind the center. Kirk Cousins at number 4 is going to be very important. The reason was, it's self-explanatory. Come on now. Like, he has to throw touchdowns. He has to be able to distribute the ball out to those weapons. But I'm going to put Kirk Cousins. Some people maybe have him at number 1, number 2. I'm putting Kirk Cousins at 4 because I think that's where his importance lies. I think he needs to win games. But I think the biggest thing is he needs to win games in big moments. I don't think he needs to win all these games because I think the defense is going to be a lot better. I think those big moments like 4th down in the playoffs and so on and so forth. That's my number 4. Number 3.
All right, Ron, we kind of gloss over this guy a lot because he's been such a staple, so consistent, a rock for the offensive line for so long. But the way this unit dropped off in play when he went down was just really awfully scary. And that should tell you just how important having Brian ONeill back and healthy for a full slate of games really is. Borderline top 5 right tackle in the league. And like I said with Danielle Hunter, the drop-off in talent from him to the next guy, whether it's Oli Udoh or Vidarian Lowe or whoever it is, Kirk Cousins is just not going to have the protection he needs to scan the field, find guys like JJ to make the splash plays deep downfield. We saw it in the final 2-3 games of the season. This offensive line, it just didn't look right without him on the field. So I think a case can be made that Brian ONeill will be one of the top 3 players that will impact the Vikings season when you keep in mind the team's whole identity is supposed to be a top 5 offense this season, because without him in the lineup playing healthy like we're used to, my confidence level just isn't the same that they'll have the right protection for both the run and the pass game. So Brian ONeill, number 3 on my list.
Oh, man.
How about that?
That's a good one. Well, my number 3, I'm going to the other side of the ball. A guy that's going to go against a guy like Brian ONeill all training camp, and that's Danielle Hunter. I think getting after the quarterback is the number one key to Brian Flores having a successful defense, is getting after that quarterback, and not because you can't go man coverage and give the quarterback 4 seconds. You can't. You're going to get killed. There's no DB. Deion Sanders, Xavier Rose at one point in his career. I can go down to Revis Island, Charles Woodson. There are some greats that could just cover till you can't. Sauce Gardner, I will give it to Sauce because Sauce had Justin Jefferson pretty much under wraps for most of the game. But other than that, this team doesn't have that. They don't have a Sauce Gardner right now. And so you got to get up the quarterback. I'm going to go with Danielle Hunter at number 3. Who do you got for number 2?
Yeah, number 2, no surprise here. It's a quarterback-driven league. The one guy touches the ball every offensive snap, player who affects the outcome more than any other guy in the field, maybe in any sport outside of, a starting pitcher in baseball. Kirk Cousins, number 2 on my list. And I think the expectations are so high now for Kirk in year 2 of this offense. I think unless they win 11 or 12 games this year, you might see a switch finally this offseason, and the team may move on from him. So there's a great chance this is the last year you see Kirk Cousins in a Vikings uniform, unless he goes freak mode and just balls out and not only puts up the best stats we've seen from him, but wins multiple playoff games for the first time in his career. Kirk Cousins will undoubtedly impact this team's season, for good or bad, more than any other player, except one, in my opinion. So he's number 2 on my list.
Number 2 on my list is the receiver who does it all, Justin Jefferson. A lot of people thought he's going to be 1 on my list. I'm going Justin Jefferson at 2. Justin Jefferson, 1 is very important. We know that. We know his legacy, his history is being made every time he steps on the field. He's going to become the best player to ever do something at 20, under the age of 25. Everybody's put him on their top list for everything. But Justin Jefferson, I think this year has to have another 1,800-yard season, if not close to 2K. But I think with TJ Hockenson, Jordan Addison, and KJ Osborne, mainly TJ Hockenson, I think it's going to be tough for Justin to hit that 2K. But I think Justin Jefferson needs to have another 1,800-yard season because Cooper Kupp, due to injury from Matthew Stafford, due to some other injuries with himself, didn't repeat. I think Justin Jefferson has a good chance of repeating because he's been a very healthy, knock on wood, receiver. So I'm going to go with Justin Jefferson, number 2. And number 1.
9 out of 10 times I'd put a quarterback here at number 1. 9 out of 10 times a receiver is only as good as the quarterback throwing him the ball. Those are just the facts. Even Randy Moss struggled in Oakland because his quarterback couldn't get him the ball. But in rare cases, when you do have an elite talent like Justin Jefferson, quarterbacks, no matter who you are, can just chuck it up and let the playmaker go make plays. JJ shattered all the records every season he's been in the league. Now he enters year 4, which means he may somehow get even better. That's scary to think about. I just think after what we saw in year 1 of the KOC system, where you had Jefferson putting up MVP-type numbers, then you have to assume in year 2, the guy will once again be in the discussion for most valuable player in the league. If he's in the discussion for most valuable player in the league, he's got to be considered the most valuable player on your team. This team rides and dies with JJ. Just his ability to take over games, overcome the odds, even with double, triple coverage. The bar is set now, Ron, so unrealistically high that JJ needs to replicate what he did last season and then some. And he's the guy that will impact the 2023 Vikings season the most, in my eyes, Ron. I'm very curious who you got number 1. You already said JJ, Kirk Cousins, Hunter, Harry. I got no idea. I'm clueless, man. Who do you got?
For my number 1 player, I'm going to go with CJ. No, I'm joking.
The hammer.
No. For my number 1 player, the same reason why you put Brian ONeill on there, I'm going with Christian Darrisaw. I think Kirk Cousins' front side is protected. He can see it a little bit better if somebody gets through. But we know the movie. Michael Orr made it famous. Joe Theismann made it a real deal. And Lawrence Taylor made them the highest paid players ever. And that's left tackle. I'm going to go with Christian Darrisaw as my number 1. Christian Darrisaw, if he cannot get it done. I mean, you saw what Patrick Mahomes looked like in the Super Bowl without a tackle. And then you saw the next year when they bought him an offensive line. Night and day. The Eagles blame the field and our cleats, and that's why the Chiefs won. The NFL is blaming both teams for being stupid and not wearing the right cleats. Whatever you want to say, that offensive line for the Chiefs was very important to Patrick Mahomes. So that's why Christian Darrisaw is a left tackle protecting Kirk Cousins' KDC's blind side. I got to go with Christian Darrisaw. That's our top 10. And again, none of our we had some our top
5 guys that matched up. Murphy,
so
Cousins, JJ, Hunter, and Harry, we both had. Yeah.
Yeah, but none in the same spot. I almost put Justin Jefferson one, but I felt like that was too easy.
Sure.
I think Christian Darrisaw is a left tackle. And that's the question. Maybe that we'll do this on Friday for the roundtable is if you had to pick one player to miss at least 8 games, would it be Darrisaw or Jefferson?
Oh,
and that's a tough one. That's a tough one.
I think I've just knee-jerk reaction. We'll talk about it Friday, but I'd lean Darrisaw just from what we saw from Blake.
And we don't want to
Randall.
go injury because I never want to wish injury. I'm going to say gambling. Like they were gambling on FanDuel on basketball, but because they did it in the parking lot of the Vikings and the NFL found out, they had to miss 6 games. I don't know. I feel like they can get through 6 games without Justin Jefferson more so than Christian Darrisaw.
You could be right. I mean, a case could be made for either
but
one.
We don't know about Jordan Addison, KJ Osborne. We don't know about what TJ Hawkins is going to be this season.
I just like what I saw from Blake Randall last year in a pinch, Buffalo game, Dallas game, things like that. Makes me feel.
You remind me of Max Kellerman, like Steph Curry or Andre Iguodala for the fate of the earth. Give me Andre Iguodala. Blake Randall.
Let's go. Digging deep. Man. Digging deep. Oh, that's funny.
But I'm Ron Johnson. That's Luke Inman. This is the Ron Johnson Show. We'll be back after this. But we're coming up next. We got the Daily 3. We're going to spend about 1 minute each today. We run out of time, so 1 minute each. But before we do, SiriusXM Radio is a proud partner of Locked On Sports Minnesota and, of course, the Ron Johnson Show. Just download the SXM app. I did it. It's very simple. You go on there, and then you can search Locked On Sports Minnesota, and all of our shows will be there right on your XSM app, which will link with your car device as well, or Bluetooth to your car device. And you can have XM Radio on the go if you don't currently have a subscription, but you can get a subscription on your phone. You can get it in your car as well if you have the car that has that ability. But remember, the SXM app, you can take it in the gym with you. You can have, and you can hear the Twins hometown broadcast where they get the Royals tonight at 6:40 p.m. to continue to try to stay in the lead of the AL Central. And the Twins are doing all they can. But remember, the SXM app can get you every pitch of this broadcast. Just search Twins. Well, now it's time for the Daily 3. That's 3 questions, 3 minutes each. Take it away, Luke.
All right, first one up today on the list, Ron. We got an NFL NBA hybrid here. Which number 1 overall pick will have a better rookie season? Panthers quarterback Bryce Young or San Antonio Spurs number 1 pick Victor Wembanyama?
Ooh, that's a tough one. Victor reminds me a little bit of Chet Holmgren. I've been watching NBA players talk about how they're going to guard Victor, and it sounds like it's going to be brutal. Like it sounds like a lot of guys just want to beat him up because he is skinny. You watch him against Kenny Lofton Jr., who was a very big, strong guy for the Grizzlies, and he dominated Victor. Now, granted, Victor was 17 at the time, but I don't think a lot's changed from 17 to 18 for Victor. Maybe he's going to get a little bit stronger this offseason as he works out with the Spurs, and Greg Popovich, we know, knows how to use players and get the best out of them. But I'm going to go with Bryce Young. I just feel like Adam Thielen and that Panthers team, like Bryce Young, to me, is going to have the necessary tools from Frank Wright to just be successful. And again, I don't think he's going to be a bust and have a terrible season like he was really good at Alabama. I think he was better at Alabama than Mac Jones, and Mac Jones has become a pretty decent quarterback. So I'm going to go with Bryce Young just because I'm worried about Victor's weight. Like I think a lot of teams are going to try to beat him up and actually and brutalize. Now, if Greg Popovich said, "Look, I'm going to keep you on the perimeter," then I could see it working out for Victor over Bryce. But right now, I personally just feel like Bryce Young is going to be protected by the O-line. He's mobile. He has a Kyler Murray type of feel, not as fast as Kyler Murray, but he is taller than Kyler Murray, but he can move. And I think Kyler Murray did have early success because we hadn't seen anything like it. I think Frank Wright is preparing to do the same thing. So that's me.
Yeah, this is kind of funny to me because you got 2 number 1 overall picks where both players' size. Remember, this was the A topic of conversation.
Yeah.
Victor for, I guess, maybe kind of good, but now that you brought up a lot of great points, maybe he's just such a thin, scrawny frame. They're going to bully him around. And Bryce, obviously, for not so good. But I'll go with Victor just because I think it's so tough to have instant success in the NFL more than the NBA. And as good as I think Bryce Young is going to be, and I do think he's going to be a baller someday, I don't see enough of supporting cast over there to feel comfortable pushing my chips all in on him in year 1. Lost DJ Moore, a top 10 receiver. The offensive line, to your point, it's getting better, but it's still not great. Give me Victor, who I think balls out in his rookie year like we all expect him to.
Yeah.
Number 2 on the list, to the NBA we go. I'm very curious about this one here, Ron. Which future Hall of Fame point guard's career would you rather have, Chris Paul or James Harden? Which way you leaning?
Well, if it's about money, personally, I'm going to go Chris Paul because his career earnings over 18 seasons is $360 million. James Harden is still up there, $300 million. So
yeah,
both are good. The only reason I'm going to go Chris Paul, here's why. I feel like James Harden has a lot of baggage with some of his stuff, his weight. People feel like he's tanking on teams to get put on other teams in the offseason. Like, oh, he doesn't really want to be here. I think Chris Paul has a better chance this coming season with the Warriors to win a ring than James Harden's going to have with wherever he ends up, unless he ends up with the Lakers. And who knows what James Harden's going to end up, because he did resign and he's talking about going to another team. So I just feel like James Harden is less likely to win a ring, and Chris Paul is more likely to win a ring if he can get a season or two, because basically what the Warriors have right now is the ring group. It's Curry, Clay, and Draymond. That's the 3 guys that have won rings. They added KD. They won a ring. Without KD, they won a ring. Now you add Chris Paul, probably going to win a ring. So I think this is Steph Curry's chance to get 5 rings. I feel like the Grizzlies are in turmoil. I feel like the Lakers are on their way out the door. Yeah, I got to go with Chris Paul on this one. I don't know what you think.
Yeah, it's been interesting to say the least, watching both these guys kind of flop around team to team during these last few years of their career. Both, like you said, ringless, looking for one championship before they hang it up. I guess I'd lean Chris Paul for no other reason. I just liked him growing up more when I was getting into the NBA. You mentioned he made more money, 16 mil more during his career.
Yeah, and the fact that Chris Paul's made 60 more million than him, and then you think about the fact that the next 2 seasons, James Harden's going to make 35 million. Chris Paul's going to make 30 and 30.
Yeah.
So Chris Paul's on pace to make 60, where James Harden is an undrafted or an unrestricted free agent in 2024. So who knows what's going to happen there. Also, Chris Paul has a better portfolio when you think about State Farm and some of the other big time commercials he has. That's that he can keep doing when he's done playing, where James Harden has created kind of a weird aura around him with the strip club stuff and the money stuff and, you know, all the weird stuff he's been doing with rappers. Like, James Harden is headed in the direction where a lot of people with money don't want to put their money in James Harden. They do want to put in Chris Paul as a family man, and they're putting their money on Chris Paul to be their spokesperson. So he's getting a lot of stuff after sports as well. But what's the last one?
All right, last one here to the MLB we go. The Twins are back in first place, but are still a middling 500 ball club. Should the front office go all in at the trade deadline and take advantage of this weak division, or keep their best assets for the future? What do you think, Ron?
Well, the fact that they screwed it up in the first place and they let Luis Ariz go, I just don't know. I don't know enough about what's out there free agent wise, because baseball is not like basketball. Like basketball, even football, you can grab maybe one player in football or two. You can grab, for sure in basketball, you grab one player and you change your organization. Baseball, unless you are grabbing like Aaron Judge or Ohtani, like, it's not like a lot of guys that I feel like they can make a splash with in baseball. Like, there's the guys that they could do it with aren't going to be out there for them to make a splash and try to trade for and want to come to the Twins of all places. And that's the problem. Like, you're one game ahead of the Guardians. You're 44-43. You're 5-5 in your last 10 games. Like, there's nothing that jumps out there for the Twins for a lot of people across the world. If you're looking at like, oh, I want to, like the Rays right now, Tampa Bay. A lot of teams might say, hey, man, like, I wouldn't mind going to Tampa Bay. They're 57-31. Like, I'm living in Tampa. We have a chance to maybe win us a ring this year. If I'm the Texas Rangers, like, there's some teams out there that have, one, great locations, great opportunity. And, you know, Atlanta Braves, Atlanta, I mean, the Cincinnati Reds. Cincinnati's not a great place, but the Arizona Diamondbacks, like, that's another one. LA Dodgers, like, there's some good places out there where people are like, oh, it's a great city and they're winning. Minnesota, I don't know. October baseball here is not great. So I don't know if they can make a spot. Now, if there's a name out there that they could get that I think would help win, I'd say yes, do it. But I just don't think there's anything out there. But I don't know. What do you think?
How about Shohei Ohtani? What do you think? You got to trade the farm for him? No, I'm with you, Ron. Ton of great points. I've watched this team make enough terrible trades the last few years. I don't think I can stomach any more of them. Tyler Malley deal for Spencer Steer. He's going off in Cincinnati right now. Luis Arise, of course, looks like a legit Hall of Famer. There's tons of them, though. Do your best with what you got. Keep your prospects. You're not going to go deep in the playoffs either way with teams like you mentioned. Tampa Bay, the Orioles, Yankees are always in the mix. The Rangers are looking great. So I say no thanks. I pass on pushing all the chips all in. Keep those young prospects and build through the farm system like the old Twins used to do.
Yeah. Well, that'll do it for us today on the Ron Johnson Show. I'm Ron Johnson. That's Luke M. And remember, you can find Locked On Sports Minnesota on Amazon Fire and Roku. You can also get the podcast wherever you get your podcast, Spotify, iHeartMedia app. It's free. And iTunes, of course. And then, of course, if you're watching at home on YouTube or on the go, remember, you just need a email address to log into YouTube. It's free, but then you can subscribe and get all of the updates, all of our videos, all of our shows every time they're posted. Again, I'm Ron Johnson. That's Luke Inman. This is the Ron Johnson Show. I want to thank you guys. We'll see you next week, though. Have a great weekend.